welcome back to the show, guys. Now, obviously, this quarantine time, at least in California, everything shut down. One of the first things to go was sports. You name it, NBA, MLB, NCAA, everything got shut down. Here to talk to us about some of the effects of that, especially on high school recruiting, we have national recruiting analyst expert, Adam Finkelstein. Adam, how are you doing, man?
Pretty well, safe and healthy, thanks. I hope you are too.
How much are you missing sports right now?
It's pretty, there's only so much of the throwback games you can watch on it's like ESPN history is going to make a comeback.
Everything's ESPN Classic now.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was looking for. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, so let's dive into it. Obviously, high school recruiting right now, completely upside down. What should these high school juniors, seniors who are now missing an entire season be doing right now? How is this affecting them?
Well, I think it's, with the seniors, we've seen a couple of trends. One, that these are unsigned seniors. One of the things we're seeing is that the kids who are essentially waiting to play the year out, play the spring recruiting year out in hopes of generating higher level recruitment, lots of them have ended up committing or close to committing to the schools that have already invested time in them. So those are relationships that have already been established, sometimes campuses they've already seen. So in some ways, I think that's brought an earlier end to their process than would have otherwise been. Obviously, there's some seniors that weren't that far along down the road with those. Some of the higher profile national guys going to wrap up their recruitment. But I think the other factor with some of those higher profile guys is there were some kids who were weighing the potential to skip college altogether and pursue professional aspirations abroad. And this is obviously a very different variable that they and their families are going to have to consider now, and really an incomplete variable because we don't know what that's going to look like in terms of international travel and things of that nature next season.
Absolutely. It's interesting you bring that up because is it a situation where players are going to be looking to stay closer to home, whether it's high school players that are coming in or even transfers?
Yeah, I think so. There's differing opinions on that, but I think so far the data has suggested that more players are going to want to stay closer to home. I think especially when they're coming straight out of high school. I don't know that trend has been quite as distinct with regard to transfers relative to the norms from previous years. But in high school, you've certainly seen that kids who were, potentially weighing the options of going farther away are now staying close to home. The most notable example is Cliff Omuri, who is a top 50 guy in the country. I'm sure I butchered his pronunciation, but he ended up committing to Rutgers, and that's a huge get for Steve Pikiell. It's frankly, I'm not sure it would have gone down that way if the pandemic hadn't occurred, but it did, and it turns into the biggest recruit of Coach Pikiell's tenure so far at Rutgers.
Yeah, and who could have foreseen this happening? I know the NCAA also extended the dead period for the recruiting period through May 31st. So what are coaches allowed to do right now? What kind of contact can they have with recruits?
It's been interesting to talk to coaches and kind of get a sense of how they're handling recruitment. I think that the thing that you're seeing everybody do across the board is really double down their efforts in video, trying to get as much game tape from the previous season as they can, because from an evaluation standpoint, that's really all they have access to. Normally this time of year, coaches would be preparing for the upcoming spring evaluation period, trying to figure out which kids were playing for what teams and what their schedule was going to be on those recruiting weekends. Obviously, those won't take place anymore, so that kind of eliminates that work. So essentially what they're doing now is going back, reviewing film from the winter high school season. And I think they're also doing maybe a little bit more due diligence in terms of talking to coaches, talking to teachers, digging into the character of each kid. Again, that's from an evaluation perspective. I think recruiting can be simplified into kind of two subcategories. There's the evaluation part of it, and then there's the kind of the sales end of it. From a sales perspective, I think what you're seeing is a lot of conversations like this, whether it's Zoom or whatever the technology, FaceTime, guys are connecting with prospects that way. And
sure.
I've seen
has an email now.
And you know what? It's interesting too. I've seen lots of them are at home. They're not in the office. And so they're bringing their wives and their kids into the process and trying to develop that interpersonal connection that way. Another thing I've seen that's pretty creative is the drone of official visits. So the kids will get a campus tour from a drone flying around a particular campus. That's been pretty creative. And then there have been other schools that have who are ahead of the curve, almost done in 2020, who've been able to move on to 2021. And to the point you made earlier, those are the kids that are usually now moving to the forefront of college coaches' minds, but that's not the case right now. And so the schools that are able to kind of conduct business as usual with regard to that timing, I think are going to have a leg up when everything gets back to normal.
Well, that's great. Thank you. I mean, thank you. You're a wealth of knowledge, Adam. We appreciate you for coming on. Coming up, we do have how you can pay your respects during this pandemic. But for now, let's take a look at some of our regional resources.